After my father-in-law fell ill, I took over his yard work, paid his insurance, even skipped my own father's funeral to stay nearby. At Thanksgiving, he raised his glass and said, "Family is who shows up, which isn't him." My wife laughed and said, "He's good at disappearing when it matters." I was sitting right there. I put down my fork, stood up, and, "My name's Miles. I'm 42. I've been married to Natalie for almost a decade. We live in Roanoke, Virginia, in a decent 3-bedroom place with a half-finished basement. I'm a contractor, self-employed, mostly doing home repair, remodeling, whatever keeps me moving and paid. Natalie's an HR manager at a mid-sized healthcare company. She works 9 to 5 and loves control, routines, and being right. I used to think she was sharp and practical. Now I think she's cold. She's also an only child. Her mom passed from breast cancer years ago, so when her dad, Howard, started having health issues, it was clear someone needed to step up. I thought we'd do it together, but it didn't take long to realize what we meant in Natalie's mind. 2 years ago, Howard had his first stroke. Minor, then another, then a fall that landed him in the ER. After that, the real work began: doctors, prescriptions, physical therapy, insurance paperwork, bills piling up. His house needed constant upkeep. His lawn was overgrown, the gutters clogged, and the plumbing always acting up. I started showing up at his place 3 to 4 times a week. Cutting grass, cleaning out gutters, fixing leaks, restocking his fridge, taking him to his appointments. On top of that, his car insurance lapsed and Natalie forgot to pay his homeowners, so I covered both out of my own account. No complaints. I thought it was the right thing to do. She'd always say, "Thank you, babe," and go back to watching her shows or texting on her phone. Sometimes she'd come with me to his appointments, but most of the time it was me. Then came last February. My dad had been struggling with COPD for a few years. He lived out in Pikeville, Kentucky with my stepmom. We weren't super close, but we respected each other. He was old school, worked in coal when he was younger, had hands like bricks, and a quiet way about him. We didn't talk all the time, but I knew he loved me. In late February, he was rushed to the hospital. Collapsed at home. Stepmom called me, crying, said he might not make it. I packed a bag and told Natalie I needed to go. She frowned like I just told her I dented the car. "You're going now? For how long?" she asked. "As long as it takes," I said. "It's my dad." She sighed and said, "What about my dad? You know how his routine gets messed up if things change. I can't take time off. He'll get confused if he doesn't see you." I stared at her for a while. She didn't cry, didn't look worried. She looked annoyed, so I stayed. My dad died 3 days later. I didn't see him. I didn't get to talk to him one last time. I didn't hold his hand or say goodbye. My brother buried him and I wasn't there. I sent a check for flowers and wrote a letter to be read at the funeral. Natalie told me I did the right thing. "Your dad would have understood," she said. But I didn't. I didn't understand. I felt sick every day for weeks. Now, back to Thanksgiving. That was the first time we had people over in a while. Howard invited his friends, Ron and Darlene, a retired couple from his bowling league. They're nice enough. I'd seen them around. I cooked the turkey, peeled potatoes, made stuffing, even baked a damn pie. Natalie made a salad and spent most of the afternoon on her phone. She posted a picture of the food with a caption that said, "Grateful for family today." Like she did anything more than toss lettuce in a bowl. Dinner started fine. Small talk, food passed around, me being quiet. Then Howard tapped his wine glass. He stood up. His voice was clear, maybe clearer than it had been in months. "I just want to say something," he said. "Family isn't always about blood. Family is who shows up, who's there when it matters." He looked around the table, smiled at Ron and Darlene, then Natalie. Then, without even fully turning his head, he tilted it slightly toward me and said, "Which isn't him." Natalie laughed. I mean, full-on laughed. Clapped his shoulder and said, "He's good at disappearing when it matters." My ears rang. I froze. I stared at my plate, turkey half-cut, gravy puddling on mashed potatoes. I hadn't even had a bite of pie yet. I didn't say anything. I just put my fork down, pushed my chair back, and stood up. I walked out the front door. Drove back to her house. Packed a bag. Took the dog. Left a note that said, "Thanks for the reminder. Now I know where I stand." I stayed at a motel that night. Sat in the parking lot with my dog, Rolo, and cried like a kid. But here's the thing, I didn't go back. Not the next day. Not the next week. And the silence? It was loud. Natalie texted me twice. Once to ask where I took the dog food. Second time to say her dad needed a ride to the pharmacy. I didn't reply. That was the start of my payback. And I wasn't even close to finished. The first few days away felt like I could finally breathe again. I stayed at a cheap motel outside Salem. Nothing fancy, just clean sheets, hot water, and silence. I needed that silence. After years of running around for other people, I finally had a minute to think for myself. Natalie didn't call. Not once. Just those 2 lazy texts. On day 5, I called my brother in Kentucky. He told me about Dad's funeral. Said they played his favorite Johnny Cash song. Said the preacher read my letter and that it made a few people cry. Then he paused and said, "You should have been there, man." I didn't even try to explain. The next day, I went back to our house while Natalie was at work. I still had my keys. I walked through the place like a stranger. Took a couple of my tools, some old photos, and left everything else. On the way out, I noticed something that stopped me cold, our wedding photo. Still hanging by the stairs. I stared at it. She looked so happy in that picture, smiling like she meant it. I looked at myself too. My smile was real back then. I took the photo off the wall, dropped it face down on the floor, and left it there. Then I got serious. The thing about doing home repair for over 20 years is you learn things. Not just how to fix toilets or hang drywall, but where people hide stuff, how they lie, how to read between the lines. And I knew Natalie. I knew her routines, her passwords, her weak spots. I started digging, not for revenge yet, just for truth. First thing I checked was our shared bank account. I hadn't looked at it closely in a while because Natalie handled the bills. My jaw locked when I saw the withdrawals. Hundreds going to some consulting firm I'd never heard of. Recurring payments to Venmo and PayPal accounts under random names. One labeled DL that popped up more than once. I opened our phone records. Her call logs were clean, but her text count with one number was through the roof. I Googled it. It belonged to a guy named Darren Lynch. DL. I felt sick. I kept reading. Found photos in her shared iCloud. One of her and Darren sitting on a bench at Elmwood Park, her head on his shoulder. I remembered that day. She told me she had a team off-site. She even brought home a free coffee mug to make it seem real. I laughed to myself loud and hard like something had finally cracked. That was the real reason she didn't want me leaving town. It wasn't about her dad. It was about keeping her little affair on schedule. And just like that, the switch flipped in me. This wasn't going to end in quiet. I found a lawyer. She came recommended by a friend I trusted. Tough, no-nonsense woman named Carla who'd seen 100 divorces and knew how to dig deep. "Do you want a clean break?" she asked, "or a full takedown?" "Full takedown," I said without blinking. We got to work. I froze our joint accounts. Started logging every payment I made for her father, receipts, bank transfers, even texts where she asked me to handle his meds and bills. Carla said it might help prove financial abuse or imbalance. I didn't even know that was a thing, but I wanted every scrap of leverage I could get. Then I talked to Howard's neighbors. Asked them what they'd seen the past year. One of them, Mrs. Russell, said something that stuck with me. "It's funny," she said. "You'd think Natalie would be here more often, but it's always been you. You were the one out there in the heat, mowing, shoveling snow. We all noticed. We thought you lived here at one point." I thanked her, wrote that down too. But the twist didn't stop there. A few weeks later, Natalie's boss called me. I didn't even know the man personally. He found my number through LinkedIn. Said he needed to talk. "She listed you as an emergency contact," he said. "There's been a situation." My stomach dropped. Turns out Natalie got into some kind of argument at work about a missing PTO request and someone reporting her for inappropriate conduct. HR was involved. There was an anonymous tip that she was having an affair with someone on the company payroll. She denied it, of course. But guess who Darren Lynch turned out to be? A consultant hired through a vendor Natalie managed directly. Company policy clearly stated, no personal relationships with vendors. She was put on unpaid leave pending an investigation. When I heard that, I didn't feel happy. Not right away. I felt numb. She was unraveling all on her own. All I did was step out of the way. That's when she finally called me. After almost 4 weeks. "Can we talk?" she asked. Her voice was soft, the way she used to talk to me when she wanted something. "I'm listening." "I miss you," she said. "I've been dealing with a lot. I didn't mean for things to go like this. I stayed quiet. I need you to come back, she added. Why? I asked. Because the man you cheated with got you in trouble at work? Because you need someone to drive your dad again. Long pause. That's not fair. No, I said. What's not fair is skipping my father's funeral for you and then getting mocked for it over dinner. More silence. Then she said the one thing that told me everything I needed to know. I didn't ask you to skip the funeral. That was it. That was the moment I knew there was no coming back. Because she was right. She didn't ask. She guilted me into it, pushed me toward that choice, and then wiped her hands clean like it wasn't her fault. I hung up the phone, and I got ready for the next step. After I hung up on Natalie, I thought that might be the end of it. That maybe she'd take the hint, stay quiet, and let the lawyers handle the rest. I was wrong. A few days later, she showed up at the motel. I was in the parking lot walking Rollo when her white SUV pulled in like a shark circling prey. She parked crooked across 2 spots and got out like she was still in control of something. Miles, she said, walking toward me. Her eyes were red like she hadn't slept. Her hair was a mess and she wasn't wearing makeup. That was rare for her. What do you want? I asked, holding Rollo's leash tight. I need to explain. You already did. Loud and clear. Overstuffing and cranberry sauce. She winced. Please just... let's go somewhere to talk. I shook my head. Not happening. That's when she pulled out a folder from her purse and held it out. What's that? I asked. She hesitated, then opened it. Inside were medical records. Not her dad's. Hers. I was diagnosed with early-stage ovarian cancer. Last month, she said. I haven't told anyone, not even my dad. I didn't know how. My whole body went cold. I didn't say anything. I just stared at her. I didn't cheat, she added quickly. I swear on my mother's grave. Darren is just a friend. I leaned on him too much, maybe, but there was nothing physical. Nothing romantic. She looked desperate. I pushed you away because I didn't know how to tell you. I was scared. The anger I had inside didn't go away, but it shifted, twisted. I took the papers, skimmed them. I recognized the hospital name. The diagnosis looked real. I still didn't say anything. I'm not trying to get out of the divorce, she said. I'll sign whatever you want. I just thought you should know. She turned and walked back to her SUV. Did I believe her? Part of me did. Another part didn't trust a word that came out of her mouth anymore. So I did what I always do, I checked. 2 days later, I drove to the hospital listed on the papers. Told them I was her husband and said I needed to confirm some details for insurance reasons. The nurse hesitated but finally nodded and confirmed it. Natalie had been coming in for tests. The diagnosis was real. The treatment plan was in motion. She hadn't made it up. I sat in the parking lot of that hospital for over an hour, staring at the steering wheel, my hands shaking. I didn't want her to be sick, even after everything. I didn't wish that on her. But that didn't erase what she'd done, or what she'd let happen, or how alone I'd been while my own father was dying. I drove back to my motel, and that night I made a decision that changed everything. I went to see Howard, not because I missed him, not because I forgave him, because he needed to hear what kind of daughter he really had, and because I needed him to finally know what I did for him while he sat on that throne and spit on my name. I knocked on his door just after dinner. He opened it slow, leaning on his cane, looking confused. You, he said. Me, I said. Got a minute? He looked behind him like he was checking if anyone else was home. Then he let me in. I didn't sit. I'm not staying long, I said. But I need you to hear something. And I told him about the hospital visits, the prescriptions, the insurance payments I made out of my own account, the late nights, the early mornings, the frozen dinners, the stress, the dog walks in the pouring rain. I told him I missed my dad's funeral, not because I couldn't go, but because his daughter didn't want to be inconvenienced, and because I thought I was doing the right thing. He didn't interrupt. I leaned forward. And after all that I said, you sat at that table and made a toast that threw me under the bus. You humiliated me in front of strangers. He looked down at the floor. She said you abandoned her, he muttered. She lied, I said. And if you believed her that easily, maybe you're just as blind as she is selfish. Then I told him about the cancer. That part he didn't know. I watched his mouth fall open. He sat down hard on the couch. He looked smaller all of a sudden, weaker than I'd ever seen him. You should know, I said, because the next few months are going to be hard. And I won't be here. I'm done. I turned to go, but he stopped me. Wait, he said. Do you think she made it up? I paused, looked him straight in the eye. No, I said. I think it's real. But I also think it doesn't change what she did to me. And I walked out. A week later, the lawyer called. She'd found something big. Apparently, while I was paying Howard's bills, Natalie had been filing for reimbursement from his retirement fund, claiming she was the one covering costs. She forged receipts with her name on them, used my purchases and my dates but signed them as her. That was fraud. Financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. A serious crime. And I had the real receipts. All of them. My next move? It was time to decide just how far I was willing to take this. Because I finally had the upper hand. And I wasn't going to waste it. I had two choices. Let it go and walk away with a clean break. Or push it. Push it all the way and make sure they both felt the weight of everything they did to me. I didn't even hesitate. I pushed. I met with Carla, my lawyer, and gave her every receipt, every text, every Venmo transaction Natalie forged. We went through them one by one, lined them up with my bank records, showed clear proof that I paid for everything and she had taken credit for all of it. Carla sent the package straight to Howard's retirement fund office and then handed a copy to Adult Protective Services. It didn't take long. 3 weeks later, Natalie was under formal investigation for financial fraud and elder exploitation. They froze Howard's retirement funds while they reviewed everything. Her name was flagged on bank accounts, and a detective called me for a statement. When Natalie found out, she called me, screaming. "You're ruining my life," she yelled. "Do you know what you've done?" I stayed calm. "No," I said. "You did that when you used me like a mule and spit on my face in your father's living room." Then I hung up. 2 days after that, Howard showed up at the motel. He was using a walker now. He looked worn down, tired, and not just physically. I think he knew this mess was partly on him. "I didn't know she was doing that," he said. "I believe you," I replied. "But you helped, even if you didn't mean to." He looked like he wanted to argue. Then he nodded. "What are you going to do?" he asked. "I already did it," I said. And I had. The day of the divorce hearing, Natalie showed up looking nothing like the woman I used to know. Her hair was flat, her eyes hollow. Her lawyer looked more annoyed than confident. Mine was calm. Natalie tried to argue for spousal support. Carla slid the receipts across the table. "This woman committed fraud using my client's money," she said. "We are prepared to file criminal charges if needed. You're lucky he's not pushing for full prosecution." Yet, Natalie went pale. The judge looked over the documents. He ordered the divorce finalized with no support. Natalie got nothing. Not a cent. I got the dog, the tools, my truck, and a clean break. But it didn't stop there. 2 weeks after the divorce, her company fired her. The investigation found that she lied about her relationship with Darren and used her position to approve contracts that benefited him directly. She lost her job, her benefits, her title. Darren? He ghosted her, blocked her number, left town. Howard's retirement payments were reinstated after a review, but under new conditions. Natalie was no longer allowed to touch the account. An external manager was assigned to handle his finances. And the cherry on top, I mailed Howard a copy of every receipt, with a note that said, "Next time you raise a glass, remember who held you up." But here's the truth. Revenge didn't fix everything. I still missed my dad. I still carried that guilt. I had to face that I chose Natalie over him in his last moments. I'd let myself be controlled. That was on me. So I went back to Pikeville, visited his grave, stood there for a long time with my hand on the stone, whispering things I should have said when he was alive. "I'm sorry, Dad," I said. "You raised me better than that. I won't make that mistake again." It started raining. I didn't move. Rollo sat by my side, quiet as ever. It's been a year now. I moved out near Bedford, built a small cabin with my own hands, took fewer jobs, made more time for myself. I even started going to therapy, which I never thought I'd do. Turns out grief doesn't go away just because you get even. As for Natalie? Last I heard, she was working part-time at a grocery store. Lost the house. Howard had to move into assisted living after a fall, and he doesn't speak to her anymore. She tried calling me once. I let it ring. Some people say revenge is ugly, that it eats you alive. I disagree. Revenge saved me. It cleared the rot out of my life, exposed the people who didn't love me, and gave me the room to finally breathe. And next Thanksgiving, I'll raise my own glass. To peace. To truth. To showing up for the right people. Even if that means starting over. Alone. And stronger.